Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Drexel 125th Anniversary Lecture Series. I'm Kevin Egan. I've been asked by Scott Knowles in his absence to do the introductions for our speaker today. I'm actually also one of the contributors to the Drexel 125 Anniversary book. But you're not here for me, so that's enough about that. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Tiago Saraiva, who's an assistant professor of history here at Drexel University. He is a historian of science and technology, and also a winner of the Outstanding Teacher Award from the College of Arts and Sciences. His publications would take us a long time to list, as he's a very busy historian. But I'll tell you that he has just, this past summer, published his most recent book, entitled Fascist Pigs, Techno-Scientific Organisms and the History of Fascism, with MIT Press. Maybe something we should all check out to help us understand our current times. Tiago's lecture today takes us into the world of early engineering education at Drexel, a foundation story for a key moment of change that made Drexel the university that we know today. So, Tiago.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be part of the celebration of the Drexel 125. And I want to especially thanks to Scott Knowles and Richard Dilworth, the organizers of the volume, for they were the ones who led me into this, into thinking that it was actually quite important to understand the history of this institution, to understand what you're doing today. So part of what you'll hear today, it comes out of this common chapter that we have in the book on the history of engineering at Drexel. And I also want to thank the students who contributed for the research. So much of the actual, original things that showed up was by digging into the Drexel archives, and this is the work of mostly history majors. Okay. And one of the things that I come across when dealing with those archives was the importance of this thing for our history here at Drexel. And this thing here being lighting, gas lights in Philadelphia. And how does it come? How does it come that this is part of a redefinition of what is engineering education here at Drexel, but not only at Drexel, but at the national level. And this is like the entrance gate to the changes that I want to talk about today on engineering education at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, beginning of early 20th century mostly. That's what I'll be discussing with you today, and see how inspirational, at least more than lessons, how inspirational that can be for our current times here at Drexel. So here's the problem with lighting at the beginning of the 20th century. This is early 20th century America, a moment of redefinition of what is American capitalism, trying to get away of the Gilded Age of the second half of the 19th century and getting into a new reformed capitalism, reformed democracy, where the big word there for that, and that normally historians use to summarize that, is progressivism. Progressive America, Theodore Roosevelt, the progressive movement, all that. That translates, that's a very important movement for engineers and for the redefinition of who engineers are, what they should do, and how they contribute to American democracy. One of the things they do is, and one of the things engineers claim they are able to do, is to challenge utilities in big cities. And the role of utilities as monopolies that are actually exploiting their situation, their monopoly situation. And so what engineers say is that if you trust us, if you trust our expertise, knowledge, we can make these things work not just for the few that dominate the large companies, but actually we can guarantee that technological advancement will work for everyone in this country. And lighting is one of the exemplary cases, namely lighting in Philadelphia. And the story is that how the way that the company was charging the municipality the municipality was paying much more than actually, or they thought, the municipality thought that they were paying much more than the utility company was actually offering. And so they hired the engineer to check how much the intensity actually of the lights, of the street lights in the city. And that engineer puts together a moving laboratory to measure the intensity of each light in Philadelphia streets. Okay? And then challenge the company, the utility company, saying you are actually charging too much. That's not the service we hired you for. And the municipality of Philadelphia gets several $1 million back because of this work of the engineer. So this consultant engineer that the municipality hired to do this is no less than who become Drexel's president, Hollis Godfrey. And this is the main character that I'll be discussing today. Godfrey was a student at Tufts, Harvard, and MIT at the electrical engineering department. So he had a degree from MIT in electrical engineering. And so after getting his degree, he became an engineering consultant. Also worked as a teacher and wrote the famous novel, quite successful at the time in 1908, The Man Who Ended the War. So an interesting one where technology, the idea that if you have very advanced military technology, you can actually end the war, because we can get into details of that novel, which is quite interesting as well, in fact. And then from 1913 to 1921, he became president of Drexel. And during World War I, from 1916 to 1918, he was one of the main promoters of this Council of National Defense put together by President Wilson. I will go into these different dimensions of his life and then trying to connect with what I just said about lightning, okay? So, here was what was happening at Drexel in the early 20th century. Drexel was offering technical education, but mostly of a kind of vocational nature. Okay? So not offering formal degrees, not offering BSs, but actually offering general education mainly to workers, to working class people. Okay? And so they would get their training would not to become, the idea was not for them to become engineers, but to actually, at the end of 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, the idea was that then they would be better workers by learning the fundamentals, the scientific and technical fundamentals of what they're doing, and that work at the factory would actually improve because of that. Okay? Well, the issue is, so Drexel was not offering neither a degree in engineering, it was not also high school, they were not giving an high school title, and so President McAllister in 1900, he actually recognized, in a very candid way, that Drexel has not yet found its right place in the educational economy of the country. And it is not easy to define what that position should be, between, what kind of institution this was, between a formal engineering school or a vocational school. And that it was there in the middle, and what was going on at Drexel. The proliferation of departments, degrees, two curricula that had some had 2 years, some 3 years. So it was quite a problem there. And they thought that, well, so Godfrey had done all this work with the municipality. So why don't we hire him and ask him to do what he did for lighting to Drexel? And so he did this, he applied the same thing that he did with street lighting in Philadelphia, the same methodology to Drexel. And so what he did was a survey of Drexel. So he started a survey of Drexel. And so we digged in the archives. We were not able to find the actual papers and the actual, so the results or the report of that survey, but then Godfrey constantly refers to that survey as the founding moment, of his reforms at Drexel. And so this idea of the survey, that as you surveyed, that there is the way that one dealt with the problem of lighting in the streets of Philadelphia by surveying each light. It's the same methodology that he will use at Drexel, and go and see what are people teaching, what are people learning, how does each department work. So he has this survey, and he wants to make that survey like not only one, so that's his proposal, that the survey becomes something of a permanent feature of the institution. Not just something that, it was just for a moment and we reform. Now this is something, the survey is something that we should always have in our mind for the normal operation of the institution, to see if we are actually accomplishing what we want to accomplish. Where is he getting this from? So where is he getting all these ideas from? So the survey, so it's what we call a scientific survey of the institution, or the scientific survey of street lighting. The thing is that Godfrey was a devout follower of Frederick Winslow Taylor's principles of scientific management. He was one of the promoters. Taylor had what historians have called a few apostles, that would go around the country, namely into different industries, and would promote principles of scientific management. So they would do this in factories, they would do this in municipalities, as the ones that we just discussed with lighting. And what Godfrey is doing is applying this thing, is applying Taylor to engineering education. So Taylor himself, as you are aware of, he started his work working here in Philadelphia for the Midvale Steelworks, and he went up the hierarchy in the company, in the steel company, by applying scientific management to the operations of the company. So the big thing that he's famous for is measuring. So the clock is normally the symbol of Taylorism, and seeing how much time does each worker takes in doing one specific task, and then by measuring that, trying to standardize the time that each one should be spending there, trying to make it more efficient, so that time has a big measurement for efficiency in the workplace. And he applies this first to Midvale, and then his followers would apply this to many other companies, many other industries, forming what they had a kind of a portfolio of model factories that were molded on the scientific management principles that Taylor put forward. Well, what Godfrey did, and that was a first, was to make Drexel the big example for scientific management in engineering education. So that Drexel would be an exemplary case, as exemplary as important as the Midvale Steelworks. So what was for the world of industry, now we have for the world of engineering, for education, Drexel will be that institution. How would that be? So the story of the survey and other things that he would do, that Godfrey would put forward. Like, for example, the institutional budget. So the budget, how you make a budget, how each department has to makes a budget at Drexel. What comes in, what comes out, what do you account for? There are rules for this that Godfrey puts forward, and that it becomes, so this budget, the annual budget, as the main tool for that survey, for that constant survey, for that annual survey that he was asking for. Okay? And so when you think about how you do a budget, something that most of us, normally, and as academics, we don't think that, it's like, oh, let us just work, we don't want to care about, filling all those details that we've been setting from, that's just bureaucracy, but it's like the budget was seen as a crucial tool in that big task of Taylorizing Drexel, of making Drexel an exemplary case of engineering education in the country, at the national level. So not just something local, but something at the national level. Okay. The budget, yeah. Now, this idea of applying scientific management in engineering education, something that, again, so this was a trajectory from the city into the university, and now what Godfrey sees is a huge opportunity in World War I to make the case that this should be a national priority. That the Drexel example should be multiplied on a national scale, and that the engineering education should be a central dimension of the war effort in World War I. So, what's going on? So, 1917, President Wilson calls for war declaration, stronger navy, new army of 500,000 men, full cooperation with Germany's foes. So, this is what is going on here. This is 1917, but of course, American economy had already been mobilized by President Wilson to participate in the war on the side of England and France against Germany, even before the declaration of war. Even before the US declared war to Germany, there was already that mobilization of American economy guaranteeing that the US was supplying, namely raw materials, to the Allies. What is going on then? What is the problem, and why? What is the case that Godfrey is making to President Wilson in order to bring in engineering education and scientific management as a main issue for the war effort? The big issue is that it's a mess. The way that the American economy has been mobilized, the way that the federal state so the agencies of the federal state are promoting this. It's a total mess. No one is coordinating the effort. So there is constant. There are constant problems and constant tensions between different agencies, and again, what Godfrey is saying, is the ones that have to be ahead of this effort. They have to be engineers, and not only engineers, but engineers that have scientific management as their main tool. So the new kind of engineer. There is a new kind of engineer, and there's the ones that are equipped with the tools of scientific management. And so we are, again, Drexel. So it's not only that Drexel would be an example of applying scientific management to an institution, but also that the students coming out of institutions like Drexel would then bring these scientific management principles into every realm of life where they would work, every company that they would work in. And so it's a new kind of engineer that is being produced by the Taylorization of Drexel as well. That's the vision that Godfrey has, which is that an engineer coming out of Drexel, and this is something that he will claim differentiate someone coming from other programs at university, for example, and he quotes openly the case of the University of Pennsylvania. So if you want specialized education engineering, you go to Penn. But if you want this new kind of engineer, an engineer that is able to transform the entire factory, an engineer that is able to bring management, to put management at the center of a company, then you will hire someone from Drexel. So it's a new kind of engineer that he's proposing. And what happens during the war is he's putting forward this agenda on a national scale. So he uses all this fora like Society for the Promotion of Engineering Education to put to where he's a big one of the big names there to put forward this notion of a new kind of engineer to actually be able to mobilize the war effort in an effective way, an efficient way. So here, there's too much light. I don't know if you're able to read from there. Maybe too small and too much light. But this is the oldest document we found in the archives here at Drexel on publicity for the co-op program. And it hasn't a date. There is no date in the document. But so going through it, it's very obvious that it was produced just after the end of World War I in 1918. And so this is written by Godfrey, and it's like saying, how are we going to put forward the idea of the co-op? And the co-op being, again, one of these crucial elements of the education of this new engineer that Drexel is producing. And the way that the case that he wants to make, like in presenting, why should students come to Drexel? And why the Drexel difference, as we now call it, is the co-op. It's that the co-op serves both your employer, yourself and your family, and your country. And so he puts together all these different dimensions of serving the employer, because you have a better a Drexel student would have a better notion of what are the challenges in the real world, but also that he's bringing to his employer all these new methods, scientific management that he has been learning at Drexel. Now, so yourself and your family, so that is more or less obvious, and then your country. So I think the thing of the way that Godfrey puts together this notion of how is the co-op is a way of serving your country, which is taking the example of what had happened during World War I, with engineers having been mobilized for the war effort in order to defeat Germany. Now, how do we translate this into peace? Well, his main issue is the dangers of the world, of the post-World War I world, are the ones that we see all over Europe. So just look at Europe after World War I, the mess that strikes, radical right-wing movements, radical communism coming in, so experiences of Soviets in Germany. All this is like the context that Godfrey puts forward and that he announces. So this is the mess that our people can avoid. That if you are trained here as an engineer, and then you would go to a company, you would be a guarantee that these kinds of things don't happen in this country. How would that be? Well, this is the ideology of Taylorism, also the ideology of progressivism, which is if you apply scientific management, productivity goes up, everyone is happy, no more strikes. It's too simplistic. This is how Taylor was putting forward his ideology. That just by enhancing productivity through scientific management, you would solve the social problems of the country, and this would lower social tensions, and so the American democracy would work for everyone. And this is like the big thing all the time, that American democracy works for everyone. And the argument being that engineers, as the ones trained at Drexel, are the ones that guarantee that the American system of production, that capitalism, that actually works for everyone and not just for the few. So this is what is trying to make the case. And so you apply what we've learned in our mobilization for World War I to the world of peace now, and Drexel will be that place, that unique place where that is producing this new kind of engineer. What I find interesting as well here is that there was no obvious place for these management engineers, okay, that he was claiming. So for this new role of management, this was not something that, my way of seeing things, that it was just there in the context or in society out there, and that Drexel would answer to that. It's something that the people at Drexel had to think that they had to create to make the case for the necessity of those new engineers, engineers that could talk and would understand a little bit electrical engineering, a little bit mechanical engineering, civil engineering. They would be generalists. That was the kind of engineer that Godfrey wanted. And so this is one of the things that I really find inspirational about this story, if you want, is this idea that we think of an institution and change the way that the institution works, not just by knowing the world outside and adapting to it, but actually trying to shape it. That's what he's trying to do. So he's starts from working at the local level with the city, then starts this thing of putting the case at the national level. So he's trying to make the case in all these different fora at the national level, and so to change the conversation. And so what happens inside Drexel is not just answering to that general context, but it's actually changing that their larger context. Okay, I think I will end right. I will end right here with just calling attention to the importance of bringing different elements that are in this story. So the city, the idea of American democracy, the idea of serving, that American democracy will only work if it serves all of the people, not just a few. It's something that it's really, really that people are obsessed with in the progressive movement, and that you do this by a new kind of technical education, of engineering education, and that's the role of Drexel. Okay. Thank you. So the idea was, of course, also to have discussion, enough time for discussion. So I hope, how are you in time? 15 minutes? Perfect.
Do you have any sense of what he did to shape the processes, the procedures, the kind of education that the university or the institute was offering to its students based on the principles that Taylor set out?
The most obvious thing is reorganize the mass of the departments. So when you arrived at Drexel, there were 13 departments, and you put all of them in under three schools. So School of Engineering, the School of what will become the School of Business Administration, and Home Economics. So everything then goes under those three schools, and the schools offer 2 titles. So offer 2-year courses and 4-year courses. Instead of the mass that was before, some of them were not offering even any kind of title, so people would just show up for classes. The curriculum were not organized. So what he does is to look, to look at what is being offered. So looking at the students, look at the curriculum, and then look at the professors, look at teachers, what is faculty doing, getting rid of old faculty, yes, hiring new ones. That's a big part of it. And so it's professors, it's facilities, professors, facilities, and the students through the curriculum as well. So those three things. And so that is, and then the budget is, of course, the way that how do you implement those things? It's with the budget. And so the budget, like the discussions on the budget every year is where you see, the tensions of who is resisting, who is not resisting, who wants to, and that is the.
Some things don't change.
Yeah, there you go, there you go, and that you have to take the budget seriously. That's what he brings in. Okay.
I may have misheard, but I think at one point you used the word that Drexel in this period, under Godfrey, that the plan would be to create engineers who were generalists.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an interesting thought, because in the progressive period, so much weight was given to expertise, and specialism in many areas have already achieved a fair amount of dominance. So, do you mean that a graduate was not necessarily a graduate in electrical engineering or civil engineering, but depending upon where he or she went with the fundamentals, he would be able to function as an engineer, and also in this managerial context as well?
So he would be trained and get a degree as an electrical engineer or as a mechanical engineer, but a new kind of mechanical electrical engineer that was able to speak to other experts, to the other fields, and and that he would be trained in all the scientific management principles, so that so he would be able to look at the factory as a whole, and they would be, that's the vision put forward by Godfrey, they would be the main game changers, if you want, in a company in order to make it more efficient. And so he's very open about it. This thing that if you want the best expert in electrical engineering, you go to UPenn, if that's what you want. But if you want someone that will change the way things are produced in this country, you hire someone from Drexel. You give him or her, no, him at that point, not her. That's later. You give him a managerial post, and so he will change your company. So he will apply scientific management, and he will be able to know what are the challenges. Although he's maybe been trained as an electrical engineer, but he will know what are the challenges in mechanical engineering, or in even mostly mechanical, civil a little bit, but mostly mechanical engineering. Okay? So it's this. I think that's actually an excellent question, because as the way that we normally think about progressivism is in that way of the rise of the experts. But so what we have here at Drexel, the way that Godfrey is positioning the institution, is we are experts, but generalists. So we are a kind of new expert. If we are experts in scientific management, this gives us like a way of intervening in the world outside that just when you are expert in one thing, you are not able to actually make things change.
Did Taylor do some teaching in Drexel?
Taylor? Sure.
Taylor?
Taylor. No, sorry. No, he didn't. So Taylor, he became he retired, so he got quite rich with a patent while he was working at Midvale. So he made a patent for new kind of machine tools for cutting metals, and so that would speed the process. And with that patent, he would have enough money just to go around and write his stuff. And more than anything, what he really liked was to play golf and tennis. And then he bought a huge house Germantown, or no, I think it's in yeah, Chestnut Hill, Germantown, Chestnut Hill, and then you'll see even in the garden he's applying. Then he describes how he applies scientific management to gardening and things like that. But he becomes more than anything like a publicizer, and he's able to live of all this money that he made with the patent. And so, so he never taught it at Drexel. So what happens after Godfrey leaves? So in 1923, 1923, I think. Yeah, I have. Is it 21, 23? I have it the right date here. Sorry. 21. Yeah. So it's to apply, so let's expand this idea of the co-op. Let's actually apply this idea. Let's apply this idea, and for that, it's not just this kind of rhetoric that Godfrey is putting forward, but you have actually to identify who are the main economic players in the region. Let's go to the companies. Let's talk to them, and that's what the next president, Mason, will do. It's establish those relations with the force, with the main, with all the big companies that are characteristic of American capitalism at the time. So the large, again, even the large utility companies, so AT&T and all that stuff, and DuPont, and so the big companies, but also drawing on what is the strength of Philadelphia's economy, which was characteristically a very diversified economic system, very diversified economy. The one, so several sizes of companies, not all of them working just on mass production, but producing, specialized items. Which Midvale, by the way, was a good example. It was not just producing; it was not a big producer of steel. So the one that where Taylor was working, but producing very specific kinds of steels that could be used by the Navy or by very specific kinds of applications. So a case where it was a very diversified base that made the strength of Philadelphia's economy, and that was on what President Matheson then will rely on to put forward the co-op program, okay, to establish those relations. And so then we have the list of the students, where did they go, and they went to all these different kind of companies.
What was the engineering profession like in Philadelphia at that time, and whether the engineers that Drexel would educate would fit in what they were looking for? Were these like the European type deals, for example, or how did it match the external expectations from the society?
That is exactly, I think, one of the points that I would like to make, is that when Drexel starts thinking in these terms, so the engineering profession is redefining itself. It's redefining itself. What is its role? And one of the ways that it redefines itself is this one of thinking about the role of the expert in American economy, in American democracy, and where scientific management is a big part of it. And so it is not that Godfrey is just answering that role that is outside, but he is shaping that vision of how it should be. And so what was before, while most of these companies, and then Drexel would establish relations through the co-op program, they didn't have engineers most of the time, or formal engineers. They wouldn't hire engineers. Yeah? And so you have to make the case that this is actually, that you need these engineers. And not only engineers in general, but a specific kind of engineers that, like the ones that Drexel is producing. And then this model will expand to other universities in the country. So namely, so the big examples are, for example, Georgia Tech or Michigan. So they will train, even MIT has lots of this. Of course, the idea of the co-op program also develops a little bit at MIT, then it changes. But this is, so what is going on, what I want to insist is that there is not just a model out there are expectations out there, and that we will answer to them, but that we are doing something here that has to change expectations out there, and then that has to change the conversation. And that's then, I think, from what I understood, looking at the archive. Maybe we'll need more research on this, which is the vision that Godfrey puts forward. That is what then Madsen tries to make with the co-op program in the years when Godfrey leaves. Okay, so establishing those relations and guaranteeing that this works not just during the wartime, which was easy, more or less, to convince people that you need more engineers, and so it's when there was that kind of general mobilization of the American economy, it was easier to convince companies that it was a good idea to hire these new type of engineers. But how do you do that in peace? Then you have to establish all these, you have to do all the painstaking work of going different companies, big ones, small ones, so all the co-op system. That's what you see developing in the 1920s with Madsen.
So what was the response to this? I mean, this was considered sort of cutting edge, or?
Totally. This was cutting edge. We were at the cutting edge. This is a new experiment on how you teach engineers. And so it was presented all the time. So, and Godfrey always, so he was a very good publicist. And so he would he organized, for example, a big conference in 1920 here at Drexel to make the point that this is bringing all engineering education leaders in the country, bringing in politicians, and so to make the case to present this institution as an exemplary one of how engineering and how technology should work for a reformed American democracy.
And society bought into that right away? Or?
Well, I think that's what we see in the so this is our big visions, and then it takes a while, or it takes a lot of work. That is what we see in the 20s in establishing on how the society bought this. So he's able to convince leaders and to convince them that this is a good idea. Other institutions start doing this. Drexel is always, and you go mainly to that journal, which is a very influential journal in the engineering profession. So this one that's here, the Bulletin, Society of Promotion of Engineering Education. So this is the mouthpiece of the reformers of the engineering education, and Drexel is consistently pointed as an example of the new kind of engineer that we should be educating. Okay, so thanks very much.